For today's topic, I want to touch on racism. It's fairly easy for someone who has not lived the life nor walked in the shoes of a person of color to say, oh, you're making everything about race. And I wanted to share some of my personal experiences that I've had growing up. We can't be blatantly ignorant to the fact that there are stereotypes, biases, as well as racism in today's society. To insist that we're delusional when we say something of this magnitude just shows me that you're exercising willful blindness. And honestly, it's just common courtesy all the way around, even outside of the whole racism topic, not to speak on someone's perception of an experience that they've actually lived. That's essentially the same thing as me telling a trauma survivor, the experience that you recall is not really how it happened. That's like someone violating me as a woman and then telling me, I didn't violate you, it was consensual. Since I'm filming this on Memorial Day weekend, let's go ahead and take a trip down memory lane. At 16 years old, I had my first negative experience with a police officer. I had a white police officer, a female police officer, throw me up against a brick wall. When I was in Georgia in 2005 or 2006, I had a police officer stop me on a routine traffic stop on my way to work one morning. And it was storming really badly. And while he went to run my license, he commanded that I lay my head down on the steering wheel and put my hands up on the dash and to keep my head down on that steering wheel until he returned from running my license. What was that about? Do I think that he would have done it to a white counterpart? Absolutely not. And since nobody really wants to do the research and everybody wants to throw out opinions about what's real and what's not, when it comes to corporate America and recruitment, that ethnic minorities with the same identical CV or resume as their white counterpart, they have to send 60% more applications to receive a callback. How do I know that's true? I'm not going to disclose my government name, but what I will say to you is my name is not a name where you can look at my resume and place that I'm white, Asian, Hispanic, Black, otherwise. Honestly, when someone looks at my first and last name, they would never even assume that I'm Black at all. I've never had a problem getting a call back. Never had a problem. I remember going to an interview in Georgia, again in my early 20s, and the look of shock that was on the man's face. The guy that ended up interviewing me, and I'll never forget at the end of the interview, as I was walking out, he said, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Who named you that?" Why, sir? So again, in recruitment, a candidate's name affects the hiring decision through either conscious or unconscious bias motives. So I'll give another example. When I lived in California, I went out there in 2011, the end of 2011. I found a couple that lived in Irvine, and they lived in a very wealthy community, gated, off of 73 and I believe Bonita Canyon. And it was a white couple, a gay white couple, and I wanted to rent a casita from them. They did a full background check on me. They came back and they said, "Well, we've decided not to rent to you. We don't feel that you're able to afford the monthly rent." Now, I had never had evictions. I didn't have problems with my credit. Nothing was wrong. Most people would have took that answer and they would have said, "Okay, I was rejected." I simply said to them, if it's because of the color of my skin, because I know I'm in Orange County, California, just let me know. They said, "Well, we just think that you can't afford it." That's when I told them, but my company is actually paying my expenses. So I'm not paying my rent. My company's paying my rent monthly. And they were like, "Can you prove it?" So I provided them a letter from HR. They actually went up on my rent $250 a month. I stayed with them for a very long while. And in the end, when I got ready to move into my corporate apartment, one of the owners came to me. He said, "You know what? You're one of the best tenants we've ever had." It was a 3-story casita and their house wrapped around it. There was a pool, a jacuzzi. I mean, this place was amazing. It was a Spanish style home. Even back then, that home was worth a couple of $1 million. But it was really a blessing for me to stay there because it was probably one of the safest places that I've ever lived in my entire life. But that owner came to me on the day that I was moving out, and he thanked me for being such a good tenant. He was like, "We never heard you playing loud music. You never had a lot of guests over. Like, it was just always you. You were just so quiet. The dogs loved you." And he said, "I'll be honest with you. The reason why we were hesitant in letting you move in when you first put in your application is because we sat down with friends and they told us it wouldn't be a good idea to allow a black person to live in our home. He told me that. This is not something that I have to make up. He told me that. And I'm friends with that couple to this day. We're still friends. But he was honest enough to tell me that it was a race thing. They were informed that it wasn't a good idea to have black people in their home. I ran into an accident one time in December of 2004, and it was on 35 in Dallas. And on this particular day, we played hooky from work because we wanted to go to a Ja Rule concert that was in Austin. Essentially, we run into an accident where a girl got hit head on by an 18-wheeler because it went over the concrete barrier in the middle of the highway. I was the first person on the scene of that accident, and I remember the mother was unalive. The airbags did not deploy. She was in an older car, and she had a baby that was 16 months in the back, and the baby was covered in shattered glass, and she had one slight cut on her forehead. Initially, I couldn't get her seatbelt undone. And a couple of minutes later, there were 2 or 3 Hispanic men that ran up, and they cut her out of her car seat, and I held her until the emergency units got there. When I talk to the father, he invites me to the wake, and he also invites me to the funeral because the emergency crew told him that a girl named X was the one that held his granddaughter until they showed up, and she was the one that removed the granddaughter from the car. When I get to the funeral, I'm automatically told by 2 white women that I'm not welcome. And to give context, the girl that passed away, she was 21, and she was a white Caucasian girl, ginger hair, blue eyes. I'll never forget the look on her face when I walked to her car that day. But once I entered inside of the facility, I was told to leave, and I was told that I was not welcome. And I said, well, the father invited me. My name is X. They looked so startled and so shocked, and they said, you're so-and-so? Yeah, I am. And they were like, we're so sorry. And the father was welcoming once he saw me. I don't think that he cared about it. But the people there initially did not want me there because of my race. A black girl wasn't supposed to be at the service. Last but not least, there's one other time that I recall. It was probably in 1999, 2000. I was walking into a Hobby Lobby in Arlington, Texas. And as I'm walking out, there's a younger white couple that's coming out dressed in emo, what we call emo attire now. And they were probably in their late teens, early 20s at that time. And as I walk past them, the girl looks at me. She says, what are you looking at? I'll beat your N hard R ASS. So I do what I think is right. I call the police, I file a report, we end up going to court. The day that we're sitting in court, the girl is dismissed. And I remember the judge saying to me, it was a white female judge, what did you do to provoke her? Because obviously you had to have done something to provoke her to react in this manner. So what did you do? And I'll never forget sitting in that courtroom crying. I did what is perceived as the right thing, calling the police to my aid, filing a report, going to court, and really standing up for my rights, and still having a white judge tell me that in some way I provoked someone to tell me I'm going to beat your NASS when I had done nothing more than make eye contact with this girl. And for a long time, I couldn't let that go. So essentially, I'm telling all of these stories to say that unless you have any context or any clue what it is to walk in a brown person's shoes or any minority, you can't jump to the conclusion of, well, you always make it about race. It's something in us intuitively where we know if someone is just not dealing with us because they don't want to deal with us, or if they're not dealing with us or treating us a certain way because of our race. So rather than negate it or tell us that we're exaggerating or making something up and that it's silly for us to feel this way, please understand that all of us have had our own individual, unique circumstances that have shaped the way that we view the world. And as I said before in my previous video, everything is not about race. But if I feel that it is, it's my own opinion. And that opinion is based in my reality, my experiences. And unless it's proven otherwise, I have the right to feel the way that I feel.